this computer. So Heather, you and I know each other, but if you don't mind, would you mind introducing yourself? And then Zoe, you can introduce yourself.
So I'm Heather Sipes, and I'm the Executive Director of the Galesburg Public Library Foundation. I've been in this position for just under a year.
I'm Zoe McGarrick. I am a librarian. I am also the Manager of Knowledge Services at Forefront, and I love talking to people about library service. And I think the best thing about our current situation that we're all in is that it really emphasizes the virtualness of the library, and it really allows us to provide full equity of access across the state because we're all in the same position right now, literally, and it's allowing the library to think through a lot of what access looks like and find new ways of increasing the equity. And one of the things that we've started doing in the library now is we are having one-on-one orientations through Zoom with people, or two-on-one. It's normally Sarah and I. We're a two-person team. And so it's normally both of us and one person from an organization, because that replaces a lot of the research appointments or other things that we normally do. And it's interesting how flexible the library model has been to all of this, and how, I don't want to say easy, but how, compared to some things, how easy it is to provide library service in this environment.
Well, I'm gonna just so everybody knows, kind of keep popping back into my email just to make sure nobody's waving their arms for help. But Zoe, yeah, I don't know. What do you think? She just want to just pretend like there's a bunch of people here. And
sure. I mean,
great.
I can just get started.
Sure.
Feel free to stop me at any point. Have you used library service before, Heather?
No, I have not.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about generally what we can do and how we can help. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what Candid has done to kind of bridge the gaps in researchability for people, since normally, just briefly, what we are in general is a funding information network partner for Foundation Center that's now Candid. So the Foundation Center and GuideStar joined together and they've formed Candid. And what that means essentially is that we provide access to Foundation Directory Online for free for a certain period of time each week. Members get access to Foundation Directory Online through us, like through the librarians. And I'll go into a little bit of what that means in a minute. But the bigger point I was trying to make was that because access has changed because of the times, and university libraries are closed, public libraries are closed, a lot of those spaces aren't available to people, they've made the essential version of Foundation Directory Online available to anyone for free. And I'll show you through our website how to get there if that is something that you're interested in doing. Essentially has a lot of drawbacks that I'm realizing as I'm going through and as I'm trying to use it and trying to show other people how to use it. So as a member organization, I would definitely recommend using Sarah and I in order to get access to the professional version, because in professional you have all of the information. So not only the profiles of the grant makers, but also grants they have made, and access to all of that data, whereas the main difference is in essential, you don't have access to any of the grants data. So especially when you are determining if a prospect makes sense to you, finding out that they made 5 grants for libraries in the past 5 years means something, but not being able to see anything about those grants kind of eliminates, to me, the usefulness of the Foundation Directory Online system, where they index the grants and they make it easier to find the information. And there is also another tool, since we're having a relatively private conversation, called Visualizing Funding for Libraries, that foundations, when they were Foundation Center, that they developed with the Knight Foundation. And so that's a tool that I can show you too, and that's free and available from anywhere.
Okay.
To give you an idea of kind of more of a landscape view of organizations funding libraries in the United States and in Illinois, just to get an idea of like kind of a heat map of where that funding is, and you can dig in a little bit too.
Okay.
Lily, are you cool with me starting? Oh, I'm gonna start to screen share then, just so we're there. Okay.
Yep, that's great.
So, give me 1 second to realize what I'm sharing here. not what I wanted to share, but let's see if I can just skip over. Okay. And I'm sorry about my cat. If he's really, really loud, I can't help it. Okay. So this is the library webpage. And I don't know if you've ever been here before, but it's library.myforefront.org. And that is the place to begin. And a lot of the resources on the library page are available for you anytime.
Is your screen showing the actual page that you brought? Okay, sorry. It just now came up, so.
Oh, okay. So the first thing to know as a member, and probably I'll send you an email after this with all of the information about kind of limits of requests and how to make requests. And also it will have our ebook login. So you'll be able to access these ebooks from your desk, from anywhere, from home. And it's about it's almost 10,000, I think, business and nonprofit ebooks. So it can be really helpful. And it's something that Sarah and I just launched kind of right before this was happening. And the cool thing about it is it is my favorite equity piece in that it allows everybody access statewide to some really great information real time. So you'll be able to print some chapters, read some chapters. You'll be able to read the whole book, but obviously access is different depending on the individual ebook. Our database list is here, and there's about 72 databases on the list, and the vast majority of them are free and available to you from anywhere at any time. They're just resources that we've collected that we think can be helpful.
I'm seeing a chat screen.
Yeah, Zoe, we've got your Teams up here.
Weird. Okay, hold on. Let's stop sharing that. Let's try again. I want to share this. Now it's an option. I'm sorry. I apologize. Can you see it now?
Not quite. Ah, there it is.
There we go.
Okay, so these are the ebooks that I was talking about, and you'll be able to get into that as a member. I'll give you a login. That is actually the only thing that is remotely available to members directly with a login. Everything else is through librarian access, and then we send you the results. So if you made a request from Foundation Directory Online, you would usually send us a few sentences of a program you were looking to fund, something you were looking to do, where you were looking to do it, maybe who it would affect, if it was targeted, to seniors or to a particular population. We would do the searching for you and send you the results back. But the ebooks you can get to directly and look around in there and get access to whatever you'd like. So this is our database list here. Again, most of them are free and available at any time, except the prospect research databases. So those are the databases where you would email Sarah and I. The ones that we have are Foundation Directory Online Professional. We have NOSA, which is a database that can be very helpful for local giving, and it is basically a database of gifts that have been reported out. So it crawls the web and it looks at thank you pages, it looks at annual reports, and it is able to, it only holds information about the gift. But what's cool about it to me is that it fills in a nice piece with corporate giving where it allows you to kind of understand priorities. So even though you're not going to be able to, since they don't have to report out who they give to, you're not going to be able to see exactly who Target Cares gave to. You'll be able to see who's thanked them. So you can get an idea of if your projects or your scope fits into their scope of work, and also what size those gifts are usually. It also is helpful for, and what I mean by local giving are places that in your community that are charitable, but obviously are not foundations. Car lots, law offices, sometimes physicians' offices, places like that make gifts, but where would you find out to who or what their interests are? NOSA can sometimes be the piece that can fill that in for you a little bit, which can be helpful. We have access to Research Point. So if you have individual giving donors and you'd like to run wealth profiles on them, we can run 20 of those a week. We would need name, city, state, and zip at a minimum. Home address is obviously best. Work address can sometimes work, but sometimes people don't have their work address connected to them individually, so that can be tricky. And we will send those profiles back. And we also have access to professional premium membership of GuideStar through the library. And the benefits of that beyond the free are that you can print full profiles of organizations. So that can be helpful because some organizations aren't in Foundation Directory Online, and some of them are in GuideStar. Obviously, the limits of the Foundation Directory Online profiles and the GuideStar profiles are that all of that information, well, the vast majority is provided by the organization. So how much they fill it out is kind of up to them. Obviously, some organizations spend a lot of time on both kinds of profiles and have really robust information, and some don't. And the other thing that GuideStar Premium can do that's pretty cool is it can make lists based on different criteria. So let's say you were looking at organizations that were working in education in a certain zip code range. It can make a list of those nonprofits so you can get an idea of kind of the density or of the scope. It can be helpful to see who's working in your general area around you, and it's a rather unique data set, being able to drill down by zip code from other databases that we have. And my favorite one to talk about that never gets talked about enough is Catholic Funding Guide. And what I like about it is what it is at its core is it's a database of funders that have shown an interest in faith-based funding. But where I think it truly shines is that many of the organizations included within it are smaller family foundations. And those are the hardest often to find out anything about, because the vast majority of family foundations, period, small or large, have no web presence whatsoever. So Catholic Funding Guide is a place where you may get a name and a phone number, or even just a contact, where you may not be able to find that somewhere else. And a lot of the organizations, if you look in their profiles, have other interests beyond just faith-based work. And if they really are faith-focused and they just want to fund mission trips or other things, they're very clear about it. So they don't want to muck around with anything else either. So I find you can't drill down past state in it. So I could find you funders that are interested in funding Illinois, for example. It has a bunch of subject areas, and it's awkward. It doesn't have like a lot of fancy stuff. You don't get a ton of information, but I think where it really shines is that potential to get at least a contact name for an organization where you didn't have one before, or where you haven't been able to find one before potentially. So that's a kind of an unsung hero, I think, depending on what you're looking to do from a fundraising perspective. We can also do general research in the sector in the library. So if you were getting a new board and you wanted to do some things about board surveys, or you were trying to work out give-get agreements, we can do those. We can do research on those kind of things and send you samples or templates or other things that we have. So any question, we're willing to tackle it. We may refer you somewhere else. We are not accountants and we are not lawyers. So if they're tax questions or law questions, a lot of times we have other places that we refer people out to, just because I would hate to give erroneous advice, obviously, because that's not the scope of what we do. I'm trying to think of, I wanted to explain about Essential. So this link here where it says Candid is temporarily offering free FDO Essential access to the public, access that resource through this link. You can click that from wherever you are and you'll be able to get into it. The nice thing about Essential is that it works the same as the Professional. The interface is completely the same. Your choices are completely the same. So it can be a good way to get your feet wet in how to use it. If you've never used Foundation Directory Online before, it's a nice platform to allow you to kind of dig in and see how it all works and kind of get an idea of what results you get. But it's missing some results, period. So if you did a search for education in Illinois, serving a population of children and young adults, let's say, you wouldn't get the exact same results list as you would in the Professional. There are some profiles that'll be missing, and it doesn't have grants data. So it has challenges, but it can be a good way to learn how to use the database because it does work the same way. And so that's where that link will be as it's live. So I don't know, I have a meeting with them tomorrow morning, and I'm assuming at that point they'll probably tell us when they're going to stop that arrangement or what they're going to do. But this is kind of their way of maintaining access when so many places where people would access it are closed. And I think normally now what I do is I kind of go into one of the databases and we can look around and see how it works. Is there one that you'd want to look at?
No, I have no preference.
Okay, sure. Well, I guess I'll start with Foundation Directory Online because it's probably the biggest and then the one where you get the most bang for your buck. So let me see if I can just log in from here. Okay, I'm just going to move this. Okay. All right, so this is what it looks like. And what happened with this database was that about 3 years ago, it completely changed interface. And before that, it was all on paper. Or it was concurrent for a while. There was paper and there was a database version. And then they decided they wanted to make it more user-friendly by giving people a search bar like Google, where you could type in what you wanted to do, as the examples are here, and it would spit out results about who is funded those types of projects. There are a few limitations to that model. The first one is these systems that rely on how people speak need to learn how people speak and how people describe things. And I don't think that it's been around long enough or people have used it enough for it to really key in on finding the right results. And also, when it was redesigned, the programmer has a philosophy, and I've met her numerous times, so I know this is definitely her. She has a philosophy that what people want are more results, not fewer. And doing this work every day, I don't know if that's how I feel. I feel that what people want is a targeted, coned-in list of good prospects, not the fact that 6,000 potential organizations funded projects potentially tangentially similar to what you're doing. Even though you could probably make links between all of those, people want more certainty, I think, than that. So what I would do if I was, and this is an option in Essential as well, is I'd click on Advanced Search and Filters. And when you do that, you get a bunch of boxes to fill in. So the first thing to know about the database is it's not a free type database. It has all of its own terms that you have to pick from. So you can't just describe what you do. You can't just start typing in the box. You can if you know a term. It'll autofill. But so you can look around in here for terms that may make sense. And everyone with a little caret has a subterm beneath it. I'm just going to grab that cat. I'm so sorry. Give me 1 second. Oh my word.
My animal this time.
I'm trying to shut them. I shut every door I possibly could, so hopefully that he will stop screaming. And then, so these main 3 boxes on the top, subject area, geographic focus, and population served, are the ones that people tend to focus on, right? So what you're doing, where you're doing it, and who you're doing it with or for. The thing to remember about when you're looking at it, and if we send search results back to you, kind of how we think about it, is that population served is an interesting category once you start looking at profiles of grant makers. Because a lot of grant makers tend to focus on subject areas that they're interested in funding and not necessarily who exactly is going to benefit or who exactly they want to serve. Obviously, some organizations are created for the benefit of seniors. They're created for the benefit of children. So they may parse that out in their profile, but it can artificially limit your search. Because it would only, just because someone didn't list out children as a population that they're funding, the chances of them not funding any projects with children are relatively low. So I normally start with subject and geographic focus. The other thing to know about subject area is that you can use more than one term in the box. So if we picked just some random terms here, you can link them by or by and. But if you link them by and, they both have to be found in the same grant. So that can also be it can really cone in your list. And sometimes that's helpful, but most of the time I think it takes it too narrow for people. So I'm a huge fan of single subject searching. So if I do any searching for you, I tend to do a bunch of single subject searches and then allow people to manually match. So if there's one grant maker that keeps coming up on your list, kind of regardless of your subject area or on all 3 of your lists, it's much easier for you to parse that out than if I were to put 6 or 7 terms in the subject area box and connect them all by or, your results list does not parse out who is interested in funding agriculture, who is interested in funding arts and culture. You're going to have to do that anyway on your own. So that's, I'm a big fan of the manual matching because of that. As far as geographic focus, you can go down to a county level, out to city, and out to state. When I do work for people that are working outside of Cook County, anywhere outside of Cook, even within Cook County to some degree, but anywhere outside of Cook County, I am one of the neat things about the library service, I think, is the level of care that we take in the results that we return. I will look at every grant maker and make sure they have made grants outside of Cook County. I will try to make sure that they've made grants in your county. If they have not, but they've made multiple grants outside of Cook County, I'll probably consider that grant maker. But I in no way want to return lists to you that are useless. So I just want you to understand that we spend a lot of time coning in those lists and making sure they're actually valuable. Because sometimes, depending on the subject area, we have to use Illinois as a geographic focus to get enough of a pull. And obviously looking through, looking at Illinois, there's big disparities in where funding is, and we're definitely aware of that, and we want to provide useful funders. So, and then there's population served, and obviously there's all kinds of populations. One way you can use population served that I think can be really helpful, depending on what type of programming you're looking to fund, would be to do a population and a geographic focus and leave subject empty. So if you were looking to do a program with veterans, let's say, you could put veterans in the population, Illinois as a geographic focus, and get a list of grant makers that are really interested in funding that population, kind of regardless of subject, where you could probably make an argument if they were that interested that they parsed out that population in a population that they serve list that's usually only about 6 or 7 items long. Obviously they're invested, you know, in working with that population, which can be very valuable information depending on how coned in your population is. We can also look up other organizations. So we can send you up to 20 profiles a week if you've identified foundations that you're interested in learning more about, or if there are organizations that are similar to yours and you want to see who funds them or who work in similar spaces. They may not be like structurally similar, but they may work with the same populations, they may do the same type of work. What's cool about that is you can find not only who funds them, but you can also see who may fund you both. So opportunities for collaboration, opportunities to take your work further. Location you can use to make lists. So lists, if I made these two the same, geographic focus and location, I could make lists of organizations that are interested in funding in Illinois that are also located in Illinois. To give you an idea of hyper-local giving. One second, I'm so sorry. Out of here, in my room. I'm sorry, I have a 6-year-old. Woke up. So, so that's another way you can do it. Or we could use the location field to make lists by using this filter here of organization type. So if you wanted to make a list of all of the family foundations in your county, we could make a list of that. Or a list of corporate giving in a certain county or in a certain city. We could do that. Obviously, Foundation Directory Online and GuideStar are not totally wholly comprehensive, right? There are organizations that are not in either. There are organizations that show up in both. So not to think of it as the be all end all, but it is a way to kind of make some important lists that may allow you to hone in your strategy for fundraising. Who's who? We can look up people. So if you'd heard of someone on your board, want to see other boards they serve on or have served on, we could try looking up people there. That can be tricky with common names. There's a lot of John Smiths in there, I bet, and finding the right one is hard. And also, these profiles are updated about annually. So, and if things change, I doubt the first thing anyone's thinking about is changing their Foundation Directory Online profile. You know, they obviously may, and one of the things that actually does cause people to update it are changes in giving interest. So if, like, I know Ford Foundation in the relatively recent past changed their giving strategy very dramatically, and so they obviously updated their profile so that people were not coming to them for types of giving they were no longer doing. We can also look through support strategy. So if you're looking to do particular things, if you were looking to buy a building, if you were looking to do buy some equipment or do maintenance, or get some IT help. We can look through support strategy as well. Sometimes it can be helpful to have a support strategy and a geographic focus, and that's it, to find funders that are really interested in supporting in particular ways. Like AT&T really likes to support IT and infrastructure improvements of that sort. Kind of regardless, that may be more important to them, that goal, than necessarily what subject you were working in or what populations you were working with, if that was something you needed to fund. Transaction type, we normally leave blank because it's normally, most people are looking for cash grants, but if you were looking for in-kind gifts or something else, or funders that were interested in doing other things, this is where we could limit those searches. And organization type, obviously, all different types of grant makers or recipient organizations are in here, so we could limit there too. Keyword I don't use very often. It's tricky, like all keywords, in that it can be it can be useful. The value of it, there's a little value in it, in that the taxonomy that Foundation Directory Online created misses a lot of terms, right? Terms get popular, things pop up, social emotional learning, the opioid crisis, things like that become popular in funding, but the taxonomy has not caught up, to really keep up with those terms. So you can try in keyword, but the only place it would really be able to find it would be in a grant description, and not every grants list has full descriptions. Some of them just say for charitable purposes. So it can be helpful, but it cannot, depending on what you're looking for. I've had some success, like with Diaper Bank, or with really particular projects. And then EIN, if you had that, you can look them up there. I can do a search real quick, and we can take a look at what the results look like, if that would be helpful. If not, we could look at another database. We could look at Research Point for individual giving. We could look at NOZA. I could show you what those gift-related results look like.
If maybe do a search here just to see how it would bring something up, and then I am interested in that NOZA that you were talking about.
Okay, cool.
And Zoe, I just wanted to point out that we do have a new attendee with us. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi.
Trying to unmute her so she can join the conversation. All right. Anyway, you feel free to go ahead. I just wanted to let you know. Hi,
Okay.
Jennifer.
Hi. Okay. So let's see. I'm gonna get this so I can use video screens end up blocking me. Okay. So let's do a big one. So let's do maybe education. And what county are you in Galesburg? What's the county?
You're in Knox County.
Okay. So let's try. Let's just see what happens here as an example of how I would start. So normally what I do is I start at the county level when I'm doing searching outside of Cook County. And let's just hit search and see what we get. I never plan my searches, regardless of the program I'm doing, because I like the serendipity of what happens. All right. Slow. All right. Yes. So what this is telling me and us is that 211 grant makers have made 803 grants to 27 organizations since 2003 that fit the refinement of education in Knox County. No one wants to read 211 profiles. So the first thing I would do is I would go to the year. 2003 to 2020, 2020 doesn't even really count. So 2003 to 2019 potentially is a huge span of time for giving interest. So I normally cone in to 2015 to start. So let's see how that changes our results list. Okay. So this is kind of a sneak peek to what I do. So that's 100, so now we're down to 135. So whenever I have a list over 100, one thing that I like to do is I set a minimum grant amount. I always leave the maximum really crazy high because it doesn't really matter. Not many grants are made in that size, but I normally set a minimum of like $2,500 or something, because when you get lists that are more than 100, that's more than one page. And when you have more than one page of grant makers, and what usually ends up happening is you get you can also get matching gifts of $50. You can get Amazon Smiles of $20, the things that people usually aren't looking to find. So if I do that, that brings us to 84. So 84 is a really good place to stop because we're going to do one more big refinement. Oh, and I usually pull out federal funders just because federal funding is a completely different animal. And I really recommend if you've never sought federal funding or if you're doing it all the time to wear a different hat and find a different day when you're doing federal funding versus foundation funding. Okay, so now to 80. So then what do? Well, so to look at this list and do something with it, you would click View All here. If we do that, we get access to this second button, Exclude Grant Makers Not Accepting Applications. So a lot of time when I'm doing searching, I would probably send a spreadsheet of these results. So you just get a kind of a line item about each of these funders. But then I would click Exclude Grant Makers Not Accepting Applications. And this is where I go through the profiles, and I would only send you the applicable profiles. Because now we're down to 27. And 27 is a pretty good place to be, I think, in terms of being able to, it being a readable list, a manageable list. You can still lose quite a few and still end up with quite a few prospects. So the way they're returned is by grant count. So the grant maker that has made the most grants per your refinements will show up first. If you click on it, you'll be able to see who they were to, how much they were for. And if you click on it, depending on the funder, you will get more information about the grant. And so this is in some ways, this is the main value of Foundation Directory Online, is that it combs the 990s of these organizations and it presents the grant data in this accessible format. What's cool about it is you can also, if this organization was similar to yours and they were doing something, not lame like this, but if they had a description where it was actually something similar to something you were looking to do, what I like is then you'd get other subjects that it was indexed under, so you could maybe get other ideas of places to look, other search terms to use in the box, other ways to think about what it is that you do. Because one thing that I do emphasize when you're looking at Foundation Directory Online as a nonprofit is to really think about what you do in as many ways as you can. And in as many, to allow you access to as many buckets of money as possible. And to think about, from a fundraising perspective, how many funders could make up this project? An example that comes to mind about that, I was working with an organization that is based in Ethiopia. And what they do is they train doctors to do more complicated surgeries. And so they have huge budget, right? They need huge amounts of money to train doctors, to pay doctors to go to Ethiopia, to do these kind of residency situations. It's very expensive. But they've never sought grant funding, and they've been around for about 30 years. They're very well supported by individual giving. And they have a new ED, and they were looking to do some grant research. And what we came up with was that they were going to begin to search for grants about water treatment and water quality, because it was essential to them that they had clean water to do the operations. But the nice thing about compartmentalizing and thinking about all the pieces that make up the work that they do is, since they're new to seeking grants, they're not going to get a $400,000 grant to actually fund, the salaries for the doctors or what they need to fund, but they may be able to get a $5,000 grant to provide better water treatment, to actually to fully fund that one piece of what they're doing that they can then build on with that grant maker and in that circumstance. So because when she first started searching, she just kept searching medical and nephrology and like really getting into people funding that type of research. And while that is definitely an angle, a lot of dollars need to come together to do almost every project, from a lot of different angles. So just to remember to think about that. But so then you'll be able to see the grants, obviously, and a little bit more about them. And let's look at a full profile. So let's try. this is what all the profiles follow the same format. They may not have the same depth of information in all the portions, but they all have the same fields. These are my favorite part of the profile. So these graphics here show you the most recent 5 years at a glance for an organization. So regardless of where this organization came up on your list, if you were looking for a public affairs grant that was $7,000, this probably isn't the funder for you. They have funded in that area and they have made grants of that size, but based on looking at these graphs, it probably isn't, you know, their main area or amount, and that it may not be the best funder for you. If you click on the state individually, this is what I spend a lot of time doing, you'll be able to see exactly what counties they funded in. So you'll be able to see that they made 4 grants in Knox County, all to one organization, but there's ways to think about that, you know, from a funding angle, but they've obviously funded outside of Cook County to some degree, which is valuable information, potentially. So then, if we decide we want to look further at this funder, then you would scroll through, and it'll go through this list on the side here, or you can click on any of these headings. This is an appropriate choice. So this is their subject list that they fund. This is an example of long subject list, short population that I was talking about. So these are all the subjects that they're interested in funding, as opposed to this really small list of populations. And based on their name and what I know about them a little bit, I doubt that there are obviously other ways to refine population, ethnicities, other demographic information that wouldn't be excluded from funding, but may be excluded from this funder may be excluded from your list if you added in a population too quickly. So then, purpose and activity. Sometimes this is really long. Sometimes organizations, you know, have a lot to say about themselves. And sometimes there are a lot of program areas that they want to highlight. Sometimes there aren't any. So this is, again, all up to the funder. Sometimes there's other funders to consider that show up here that are produced by it's a list produced by an algorithm within the program that may also fit your needs. How to apply? Sometimes there are there's some funders are still really set on paper applications and don't have online applications, so obviously there'll be more information there. Sometimes it'll just say go to website. This is kind of a middle of the road amount of information in terms of what they provide. Any giving limitation information that may be relevant to the project you're looking to fund or what type of organization you are. Your financials are here. If you wanted to look at this 990, and if you want it from us in the library, just tell us you want us to send you 990s. If you were in a space and using this, you could click go and it would open there. But again, the whole point of Foundation Directory Online essentially is to eliminate the looking at of 990s because they have done that for you and made this information more available. Governing body lists, if there are active LinkedIn links, they will be here. So maybe you, someone on your board, somebody else knows one of these people, you'd be able to make a connection. Communications they've been a part of with Philanthropy News Digest, other publications, and all of their contact information is here at the bottom, which can be nice just to have it all in one place if you need their phone number or their address or a way to get a hold of them. And so that would be a full profile. So that is something we can send. And that's what, if I did this search for you, let's say, we don't usually send more than around 30 full profiles when we're doing searching. So we try to cone it into that amount if we can send 30. And then we can send you up to 20 a week if you have a pre-created list of funders you're looking for information on. Or if we sent you just that spreadsheet of 80 from the original search, you could pick 20 a week for 4 weeks or whatever you'd like to do to get that information about those funders. Because sometimes if you've been around a while and you've been doing the funding thing for a long time, there are funders that either are currently funding you or you're not interested in, or you can be more prudent with that list than we can. And there's one more website that I'd like to mention related to Foundation Directory Online and kind of getting more comfortable with it. It's Taxonomy. taxonomy.candid.org. And that is, it will be able to show you, I can actually show it to you. Look at this. on my computer. This is available to anyone from anywhere, so any computer that you're on, and it will show you all of the subject terms and all of the populations and everything within the system. So if you wanted a little bit more control over the searching that the library was doing, by all means, you can send us the exact terms you'd like us to use, or you can just get a better idea of what possible terms there are. Because it will show you, if we go in here again, if we went here, what education services means, because I have no idea what that really means. So what that means, and all of the terms that fall underneath it. So you can feel free to dig in here. It is by no means necessary. I just feel like some people like more control over the searching, and some people spend a lot of time. We get a lot of requests in the library where people have come up with this wonderfully thought up 25 long list of keywords, and we can't use any of them because obviously none of them are Foundation Directory Online terms. And so they've spent all that time when in reality they could actually go in here and pick out 25 of these terms if they really wanted us to do that kind of searching. We would love to do that for you. And then I am horrible with time. Okay, and then I will do a quick buzz through NOZA just so you can get an idea of how it works and how it may be helpful. A way that I've used it for someone recently is, they sent me many, many lists of literally every auto dealership in the 6 or 7 towns around her. And I looked them up, and some of them there was giving information and some of them there wasn't. But because sometimes, you know, if it's named after a person, like if it was John Davis Ford or whatever, sometimes he gives us John Davis, sometimes he gives us John Davis Ford, you know, to get an idea of even how to approach them. If they've never made a gift that was over $3,000, maybe you shouldn't, you know, maybe you shouldn't be asking for 10, but, you know, just trying to get that kind of base information. The thing to know about NOZA is that it doesn't hold data. So it's constantly crawling the web, every search you make. So if something is down, it can't pull it. So let's say yesterday an organization had all of their annual reports from 2000 to 2019 uploaded. And then today they removed everything before 2010. You wouldn't be able to see those gifts, obviously, because it couldn't find them. If organizations refer to their donors in weird ways, like lions or strange, obviously it can't connect that with a person. And when you're looking at, you can look up individual people in NOZA. You could put in Susan Smith gifts in Illinois and see every Susan Smith gift that's been made. Obviously that's not useful. You're not going to get any information about the Susan Smiths. But what I have found is you can also use a recipient organization. So I was working with a woman in the arts field, and she had a lot of connections to the art funding community in Chicago. But so she looked up the School of the Art Institute, and she got a list of people that had donated, and she actually knew those people. So it was an important list to her because she had the contact information. She was able to get to those people, but she didn't know the size of gifts they had made, or so sometimes it can work backwards too, depending on how small your community is and how connected you are to it. And it's a very spare interface. There's nothing fancy going on in NOZA. Okay, so this is really how it starts. If we wanted to look up, is there anything you wanted me to look up? Does anyone have any suggestions? Should I just start?
You can just start.
Okay. Interesting. Let's see if we look up. We'll do corporate. So just to give you an example, like the one that if we looked up Target, if I spelled it right. If we looked up Target in Illinois, let's just look at Illinois to make this easier. And we can also set cause areas. So if we wanted to see all the gifts that Target has made in community improvement, let's say in Illinois, if we click on search, you'll be able to see them. So you'll be able to see who they've made the gift to, a gift range, and you'll be able to see the year that they made the gift. So this can be helpful in a bunch of ways. It can be helpful if you are interested in contacting them about a gift. It can also be helpful if they're a current donor of yours to see kind of who else they're giving to, if they're giving in the same gift range. And if we click on it, I'm going to do this, I've been doing it this way. I'm going to look at these two records. You have to export it to a spreadsheet normally, and then you can look at, so I can show you what you'd actually get, what it looks like. There we go. Because you get a little bit more information. You normally get a category of gift, and you'll often get a link back to where it got the information from. So what the report or the thank you page or whatever it was. Sorry, this is so slow. Okay. So yeah, here's just an idea of what it looks like. So it is, so we have the recipient name, the donation year, the donation category, and so the website and the source link. So that would be kind of how you would see, this would be what it would look like, the results list. Usually it's longer than this, obviously. But so it's an example of what that looks like. And so, yeah, you can look up a lot of things in NOZA. Sometimes you'll get more results than others. It can also be helpful for organizations like Baxter Healthcare that have multiple arms of giving. They have a foundation, but they also do corporate giving, you know, to try to really see where those interests lie. But I think I am almost out of time, and I wanted to leave some time for anyone to ask any questions or how we can help. And I'll definitely I will forward to Lily the full list of library benefits and logins and all that information, and she will, I'm sure, get it on to you guys so you can start making requests. Sarah and I will be looking for them. Thank you.
If you do have questions, feel free to just unmute yourselves and ask them out loud, or if you are unable or uncomfortable with that, please feel free to put your questions in the chat box. And while we're waiting for that, Zoe, you had mentioned that Foundation Directory Online, or Candid, is offering access to the Essential FDO. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
What is the biggest difference between what you can access temporarily right now and what you get through our library services?
So the biggest difference, it's so funny, I didn't realize how big this difference was until I was doing a live search on Essential for a group of students. And I was trying to explain to them how to pick a good grant maker, because they were from a nonprofit class, and they were trying to pick a grant maker that would be likely to fund their new nonprofit. And I was trying to explain how valuable it is to see how many grants they've made in the subject area and who they were to, and you can't see any of that. You can see the profiles, but you won't be able to see any of the grants data. That's the main difference. And your list of results is shorter than it is when you're using the professional. But again, the link to that is at the library homepage, so library.myforefront.org. And it is right up here in the search database is this little box. Access the resource through this link. So that is where you can get to that.
Any other questions, comments, ideas? I did have an idea, Zoe, that I'll be bringing to you later. Yes. So be on the lookout.
I will.
And Christina and Jennifer, since you joined a little late, I did just want to point out the ebook section here. This is the library's homepage. If you're into enhance some skills, or you know anybody who is, these are available to you, and it's a really exciting new feature that is being offered through our resource center. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and it's super great. Also because you don't need to send a message to the librarians. I will send out the link with the login information for that, and so you can dive in all on your own. Take a look.
Oh, Christina says, thank you so much. We have utilized the Forefront Library and the librarians have been incredibly helpful.
Oh, that's always good to hear. We don't get a lot of feedback. Some of the weird things about doing a lot of virtual work.
Zoe, do you prefer, well, I guess email now. I don't know if people can still call. I guess you talked about it, you know, if somebody wants to send you a search, they give you some information, but what is the best way to engage, like from the get-go? If it's their first time or they're not sure where to go or what to do, where to get started?
Yeah, I would just send an email to member, MEMBER 411, the numbers, so member 411 at myforefront.org, and that will get to Sarah and I, so it will get you your quickest response. Our normal turnaround time is about 48 business hours. We are often much quicker than that, but that's just our normal time. If there's any sort of closure or anything to be aware of, we have a pretty fast, smart auto response that'll let you know. To look out for any of that. But yeah, feel free to ask any questions there. I mean, it doesn't have to just be requests. So and I am totally comfortable with the phone. I just have a lot of trouble with getting calls through Teams. It's the call quality is really poor and it's not working very well for me, but I will send along my phone number as well, and feel free to call if you want to have a separate Zoom, if you want to hash it out over the phone, all that is totally fine, because sometimes it's much easier to do that than to send 60 million emails.
All right. If there aren't any other questions, I just thank you, Zoe, for joining us today and walking us through this. I know we were really bummed that you and Sarah weren't able to join us physically in April like we had planned. So hopefully sometime in the future, we'll get to see you face to face. And thank you, everybody, for joining. We know that everybody is very busy and that your time is valuable. So we appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yep, and I will be sending out a follow-up email with those resources, and I'll send you this recording. So if you missed the beginning, that will be available to you. So thanks again, everybody, and please reach out to myself or Zoe if you have any more questions.